Well, good afternoon and welcome to the work session on Monday, May 13th. We're going to hear from the mayor and then the municipal court, the city clerk, the city treasurer, and youth alternatives today. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with Mayor Collins. Welcome.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, I am Patrick Collins, Mayor of Cheyenne, and I don't have a lot to tell you today. The Mayor's Department's pretty simple. There are a number of agencies that are located within the Mayor's Department, but they're all going to be testifying individually. So I'm just going to talk specifically about the Mayor's office. So our budget request is up $379,473 this year. And I'd like to kind of explain why those things are going up. We had a couple of positions that were shuffled. We had Renee Smith was hired as our grants manager a couple of years ago, and she's done an amazing job for the city of Cheyenne. What we learned was that many of the things that she does is also tips into economic development. Almost all the things that she's writing grants for seems to be also into the economic development area. So we changed her title to the Economic Resource Administrator. So she's still doing grants, but she's also helping focus on the way that we're growing the city. And she's now in the mayor's office from the treasurer's office. So that salary transferred over. Amy Gorby is our community development manager. She works with Renee in that office. Renee's her supervisor. So her office moved over to our office at the same time. Paul Bellotti is our new city project manager. Thank you all very much again for that position. He's a new hire approved by council this last fall, winter, and he's now working in the mayor's office. And then we have a couple other positions. Matt Murphy is our city's public information officer. Matt was hired when we lost Kat when she passed away here tragically last year. And Matt's been doing a great job of handling the public information stuff, getting things out to the public. Holly is the boss. She runs the office. Her title is Director of Constituent Services, and she definitely manages the office. And then the latest hire for us is Amber Ash, is the new Chief of Staff. She recently joined our office here just a couple of weeks ago. The good part is she keeps coming back to work, so I think she likes it, and we're happy to have her with us. So those are the human bodies in our office. And it's why some of the changes that you see in the dollar amounts were just a shuffling from one department to another. We did ask for $20,000 more in professional development for the training and conferences that all these folks will need to go to. We really didn't have much budget for that, and we need to send them to that part of the training for their positions. And then we also had a $2,700 increase in our computer line item. Both our PIO and the planning department needs a public survey tool, and they selected SurveyMonkey, and we approved that last year, or actually in this fiscal year, but it's now a new item in our budget. For the PIO and planning, it's a really good way to survey what people are thinking or to ask them questions about things that they're thinking about. I was thinking like, when we talked about the differences in facade improvements or materials, to be able to send those things out and get feedback from folks. So I think it'll be a very powerful tool for both offices. And then the last thing was $1,000 in professional services. Our PIO thinks that there may be some need for some graphic design for different materials that he may want to build over the next fiscal year. And so those are the only asks that we have going into the 2025 fiscal year. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mayor Collins?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Councilman Roybal.
What precipitated the move of Renee and her bunch over to your office?
I don't know exactly how that all happened, to be truly honest with you. Renee, came to us and talked about the fact that, a lot of the work that she does really does it really is in the economic development area. And so she was, I think, looking for maybe an expansion of her role or recognition of that role. And at the same time, it made sense if she's going to be doing that kind of work to come from the mayor's office, would maybe give her a little bit more perceived authority when it came to those kinds of those issues. And so she asked if that would be possible. And obviously she's a superstar, so we wanted to say yes.
Yeah, okay, President Escabel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just so we have it on the record, I know it's mentioned in the budget book in page 26, and so we don't have to ask every budget about it, but the accrual to adjust to actual pay, just give us a briefing about why we're doing that. I understand it, but just so we have it on the record.
I think, Madam Chairman, through you, I think the biggest concern for me was I want to make sure that we're paying our employees legally and we're paying for every hour that they work. And the way that we currently pay our hourly employees is almost like a salary. And when we're applying for federal grants, we're applying for grants in general, we have to certify that we take care of our employees properly. And I just wanted to make sure that we were doing everything the way we're supposed to legally. And so we have Paycom. There's no reason people can't clock in and out, so we can actively manage the hours they work and pay them for every hour that they work. And so I think that that's the reason for this. I've been concerned about this for a couple of years, and we've been trying to understand it. And now we're trying to take action to correct it. In the end, the employees will be paid the exact same amount of money they are now, but we're just going to do it according to Hoyle, if you will, according to the federal laws that regulate this. If that makes sense.
Any other questions from committee? Councilman Johnson?
Yes, ma'am. So looking at your $20,000 for additional staff attendance at conferences and meetings, was this principally going to be you or Renee or Amy? Because I didn't know if Matt would really go to too many conferences for PIOs and so, or Holly for that matter. So was this principally just for the three of you that would kind of go to housing conferences, grant conferences, and then your expenses that you accrue throughout the fiscal year?
Madam Chairman, through you, Mr. Johnson, I don't typically go to any conferences really that are outside of the state, other than like WAM conferences, or go up to Casper, legislative conferences. My focus has been to stay locally. So most of this is going to be for Renee to go to grant conferences, Paul to continue with the purchasing stuff. Amy, if there's conferences for her. And then our chief of staff to participate in the city manager's part of WAM. She's got a degree in a master's degree in public administration, and so she qualifies to be part of that group, which I think will be a great learning opportunity for her. And so those were the kind of things we were looking at. We really don't typically do a lot of that, but as these new people have come in, I think it's really important that we allow them to be able to get out, see what best practices are, and get an opportunity to mingle with their peers.
Okay, so I guess a follow-up question. So nothing yet is planned for them as far as conferences after July 1st at this time, is that correct? Or do we assume that they already have reservations and things made? Was this as far as, because it looks like I can't imagine there was a lot of rollover from $1,422 to go. So do we have anything scheduled for those individuals after July 1st that we should know about before, with the budget approval?
Madam Chairman, through you, I'm not specifically aware of anything. But then I don't have their schedule, so I truly don't know what they have in mind. I know our chief of staff has already registered for the attendance and membership in the city manager's part of WAM. So I know that that's already happened. But as far as the other folks go, I don't know what conferences they're planning on attending. They haven't shared that with me yet.
Any other questions for Mayor Collins? I did have one for you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, as with Survey Monkey, if that amount that we are paying for that, the $2,700, I'm guessing is that just for Survey Monkey, and is that half, or is that the full amount and we're just gonna let planning use it, half of it for free?
Yes, ma'am. Total amount of the cost of the contract, and it'll be used by anybody in the city who wants to be able to use it. But the administrators of that will be the planning department and the PIO. Anybody else who wants to use it will have to have our folks who will be trained how to use it, help them develop the questions.
And my second question, Mayor, is that I was curious about, the Supreme Court just ruled on overtime pay, in the last 2 weeks or so, 2.5, 3 weeks. And I'm just curious how that is going to impact our non-exempt employees. And if we've looked at that, because that may be a significant issue, with payroll.
Madam Chairman, back to you. The truth of the matter is I don't know because I wasn't aware that the Supreme Court had just done that. However, Darren and his team are really good at that kind of stuff. I can't imagine we're not already doing everything we're required to do when it comes to overtime.
Okay, thank you. I just know that there were some changes on how exempt status is being documented or allowed, and that many more people that may have been considered exempt in the past are no longer considered exempt. So we may want to make sure that we take a look at that. So, okay,
Thank
any
you.
other questions for the mayor? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to municipal court. Good afternoon. And I believe that we're on page 102 and 103 of our notebooks. No, has to be red. There you go.
Thank you. I'm Tony Ross. I'm the senior municipal court judge for the city of Cheyenne. Thank you for taking the opportunity to hear how the municipal court is doing. Really, this is an easy budget for you here today. There are very little changes in the municipal court budget. The difference is $3,395 increase, and that really is attributable to payroll, basically. Contractual services are down. Parts and supplies are even. And really, quite frankly, it's a budget that really does not change from previous year. We're operating with a staff that is really doing a good job. 2 full-time judges and part-time judge, Judge Jeffries. And we have 5 other individuals that help run the court. We've had some staffing changes along the way. And currently our clerk of the court is Christina Woodhouse, and she's doing a great job. And I'm going to be losing my judicial assistant, Morgan Edmond. Probably at the end of June, she got accepted to law school. I'm not really gonna miss her because she's done a great job, but we have somebody already, we think, that will fill that slot once it opens up. Other than that, I don't know what more to tell you, other than the court is hearing cases regularly. We're getting our work done. The workflow is pretty much constant, but we're seeing and hearing cases daily. And I think that the city council has made a couple of changes to the ordinances in terms of some offenses that are no longer jailable. And as a result, we're not having to have jury trials for those particular kinds of offenses. One of the things that I think we will see at some point in time is the number of shoplifting cases that come through the court is immense. But the law now is that on a 5th offense, it's a felony. And so we're taking great steps to try to advise the individuals that you get, if you get 4 and then you get 1 more, it's a felony and you probably go into prison. So, but other than that, I'm open for questions if there's any questions that you do have.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your Honor, couple of things that you mentioned there aren't really
directly budget related, but I thought that perhaps sometime later in the week, you and I could get together and you could fill me in on some operational aspects of the court.
Sure, be more than happy to entertain you at any time.
Okay, well, we'll do that. It's a lot of changes in our society and in the operation of the court. I'm glad you have a nice court to operate in.
So we,
Thank you.
yeah,
Madam Chairman, Judge, I noticed some of your, like, your division, some of your payroll costs went up and yet we managed to have a reduction in health insurance. How did that work?
I don't have a clue, to be honest with you. I think that comes, you're gonna have to ask Robin, but health insurance has gone down apparently it might be part of the wellness plan that the city has implemented. But I really don't control any of the costs with regards to health insurance.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
And I'm sure that the treasurer can fill us in. I'm guessing it's probably somebody who elected not to take insurance because they had another opportunity through their spouse or a partner. Right. Any other questions for the judge? President Escobar?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you, Judge Ross. You mentioned the shoplifting. I think we asked this question when we were going through it through council. If a juvenile gets 2 convictions and then as they get to be 18, they get 3 more, would the 2 go towards the 5 as the felony?
There's no time limit on the look back period, so to speak, with regards to the number of offenses. So if they have juvenile, had a couple of them, stole the candy bar. We see them in municipal court where you see his thefts that come and go or something, a hot dog or something. It doesn't matter the amount of money. It's a conviction. If they're convicted, they will, that'll be on their record.
Learn fast then.
Yes, right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Councilman Johnson.
Can you describe what exactly was when we had the decrease of $1,000 for dues and subscriptions? What actually went into that line item compared to the now transfer to license and fees budget? What's the difference there between dues and subscriptions and license and the fees? It's just a lateral transfer.
This lateral transfer was requested by Brenda Moreau, that it more appropriately fit under licenses and fees. Here's the deal. Judge Singleton and I must maintain our bar licenses. We're not considered like a district court or circuit court judge in terms of membership to the bar. We have to pay our dues because we're not considered a state court, so to speak. So we find ourselves many times in this little gray area as a municipal court in terms of supervision by the Supreme Court or not. Does particular statute apply to the city court? It's just one of those things. So that's the recommendation was the dues and subscriptions was not the appropriate line for it. And so it was a lateral transfer into dues or fees and licenses.
Okay, and then a follow-up to just a comment that you had made during your presentation. I know that we're also looking at existing code after the first round went through in regards to non-jailable offenses to kind of go through the entire document to see, you know, exactly what might not be jailable. So within the past fiscal year, with jury trials, I know that when I did the mock jury, even though it was on a weekend, I was interested to see how many of the parking citations that we had actually, the judge had signed off that they were validated for people doing their civic duty. Do you know how many of those we've done for parking?
I don't, through you, Madam Chairman. I don't know that. parking now is no longer in the municipal court. We do sign off. For instance, we just hosted the Wyoming conference for municipal courts last week. And we did sign off on some parking there for attendees. But as a general rule, we don't do that much.
I just didn't know if you're, because I know usually you went to your clerk and said, I'm parked in the parking garage. And then can you validate me while I'm here for jury duty? So I
Right.
just didn't know if the clerks had supplied you with that information on
No.
how many they had maybe deferred.
Madam Chairman, through you, no, and we can get you that information, but I didn't come prepared for that.
Yeah, and I can, not to take time out of your day, I can send Ted an email or Captain James, because since they're the ones that oversee parking, just to see how many we may have got
Mhm.
from the courts, because I think that's where it would have transferred over to them.
Sure.
Any other questions for Judge Ross? Well, I have to say that I wish all of the budgets only went up by $3,300. So.
Well, we try to
appreciate
keep our fiscal house in order. Thank you for hearing me.
We appreciate it. Thanks so much for being here with us today. At this time, we'll move on to the city clerk's budget, which is page 114 and 115 in your notebook. Welcome.
And Madam Chair and council members, first I'd like to thank Robin for all her hard work on the budget. I know it's a lot of work for her and the mayor has a lot of decisions to be made. And you guys get the ultimate decision, so we do appreciate that. The clerk's budget, we don't have a lot of changes. Most of it is in that payroll line item as some of the others. The only other addition we had was for let me get the right language here. Hold on. We had asked for a additional $1,555.95 for an upgrade to the full service supplementation plus subscription for the online monthly code updates. It's kind of a necessity. If you have detailed questions, I think the deputy city clerk can probably answer those a little bit better, but the only other request I'd had originally was for a code enforcement officer, and as the mayor indicated the other day, he's decided to approve a part-time position for that. And this individual will work with multiple departments as we have multiple code enforcement issues. The clerk's office just envisions needing to utilize that person on a case-by-case basis. So the idea at this time is most likely to be housed in the compliance department. Mr. Fountain could speak more directly to that, but it would be a position that would be used citywide for that code enforcement purpose. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions for the city clerk? Councilman Johnson?
So on your last statement, should we wait till Eric speaks in regards to that? Because I'm kind of confused on exactly what the clerk's office would do with code enforcement. Is that like permitting violations, or what does it entail in your office that would break it down from what your office does compared to what Eric's office does? Because when you said that, I automatically thought it would be in the compliance department for code enforcement. So can you kind of just fill us in exactly what your office's role would be in this person?
Yes, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Johnson. Yes, it's come to light over the last several years. We've had multiple people violating the licensing codes within the city code. For instance, a tattoo artist that's operating without a license, a beauty shop that doesn't have a license, somebody, multiple things, massage establishments, things like that. We need to have a mechanism to enforce the code. And right now we don't have a real good way to do that. And this person would do that kind of function for the clerk's office. There would be different functions that Mr. Fountain can answer as far as other code compliance type issues, but it was just in general code compliance person that would be able to go out and talk to these folks, try to get them in here to get compliance, get them in here to get their license.
Right, so I guess, is that constituent driven that that's how you get the reports? Because I would think that a lot of those licensees had to have registration through the Secretary of State. So as, you know, for their business license on that part. So are we cross-referencing, you know, against the Secretary of States for what are active license or active businesses in the community and then see if we have a corresponding license on file? Or like I said, is that constituent driven for a complaint?
Madam Chair, through you. It's basically through complaints, Facebook. We find a lot of these individuals are unlicensed via Facebook. They're advertising. Maybe they're in a location we're not sure they're zoned for. We do immediately reach out to these folks. There's just those few, that handful that just are not going to comply. And that's where we need the enforcement level to help us get that compliance.
Okay, and then segueing so that I know how I drift off into new categories and you think I'm still talking about the old one. So this question goes to the $2,474. So is that for a muni code? Is that what we're looking at there or what is, because it says for a projected 5% increase to maintenance fees and current online software programs. So in the current city code software, so I'm guessing that's muni code. Because from what I gathered from planning is the PDFs are uploaded in-house and those are pretty instantaneous, but everything else is submitted to Muni code for an update. So for one, is that what the increase is? And second question is, what's our turnaround time for Muni code for when we actually know our ordinance changes have been put into effect?
Madam Chair, through you, I have the deputy clerk come up and she works with that a lot more directly than I do, so she can explain it better.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, through you, Kylie Soden, City Clerk's office. So we anticipate a 5% increase across the board for a lot of our online software programs. So part of it is would be for Muni code. Currently, we update our city code online and our paper portion of the city code quarterly. But what we are proposing with that additional $1,500 increase is to be able to update our online city code monthly. So that is what we are proposing with that.
Okay, and so I guess through you, Madam Chair, is you guys have already done your Open Gov section, right? As far as what so was there a feature in Open Gov or did you have to still manually send files over to Muni code or was there a transition through the two software systems that Muni code, or excuse me, the instant you guys put it into Open Gov, that it automatically would do a file transfer over to Muni code, or does that still have to be two separate transactions? I'm guessing by your head shake, but I'll let you speak.
Through you, Madam Chair, two separate programs that don't work with each other, so they're separate functionalities there.
Okay, that's all I can think of right now.
Okay, any other questions from council? Thank you so much for being with us today. Next, we'll hear from Robin Lockman, our city treasurer. Thank you for being here today, you and Brenda. Yeah, at the page. I'm looking.
170, that helps.
Oh, thank you. It's under finance, but not under T. So 170 and 171.
Good afternoon, city council members. My name is Robin Lockman and I'm the city treasurer. The city treasurer's department has just one general fund division, which is finance. As you will see, starting on page 170, my 2025 budget request increase is a bit of 2%, a little over 2% from fiscal year 2024. Most of this is the result of the accrual to adjust to the actual pay line item that was just discussed, along with the 3% cost of living adjustments provided to all permanent employees last January. There are no changes to the number of FTEs in my division compared to last fiscal year. We still have 9 employees, including the new procurement specialist that was hired a couple months ago to assist TJ with creating all purchase orders over $10,000. This in turn has allowed him more time to focus on bids and RFPs. Although we have added the new position, as the mayor had indicated, the grants manager position has moved out of my department and is now in his department. I have just three small non-payroll increases in my division budget. I increased our printing budget by $800 to cover inflationary increases for our check stock that we have to order, envelopes and local letterhead that we order for the whole city. I also increased computer software maintenance by $870 due to higher costs for Contract Safe, which is our software subscription where we enter all of our revenue contracts in there to try to keep track of who owes us what and make sure that they're paying us. This covers the finance division. If you have any questions, you can ask me now.
Are there any questions for Treasurer Lockman? Councilman Johnson?
So first of all, nothing specific. I kind of wanted, as far as a procedural question, because you and I had discussed this in regard, because you handle the payouts that go to our vendors, and you and I had discussed in regards invoices from other departments that come into your office as far as the vetting process, because the vouchers are no longer a voting item. And so have we made internal policy changes to make sure our vendors are getting paid in a more suitable fashion, that they don't have to wait until a council approval on a non-voting item anymore? And have you seen a substantial improvement in regards to our departments getting the invoices out to you so that we can pay our vendors on a timely fashion?
Madam Chair, through you. Yes, we actually did make a huge procedural change this last fiscal year where we're paying our vendors every week instead of twice a month. And it's made a bunch of vendors very happy to get their money earlier. So it has caused us quite a bit more work, but I think the payoff is worth it.
So I know that when you and I had spoken, a lot of complaints have went to your office first, because they were wondering where their pay at. So since you say there's been an improvement and most people just critique instead of compliment, have you received compliments from vendors that they actually, are pleased with the procedure that we do it on this instead of the old
Well,
way?
to me, I think absence, Madam Chair, through you, absence of complaints is good for me. But no, we haven't received any compliments, but I'm sure they're happy.
Councilman Roybal?
Madam Chair, not really a question, just more of a compliment. Thanks for the book.
Oh, you're very
You and
welcome.
your crew makes this way easier than it was 20 years ago.
Thank
So,
you.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments for Treasurer Lockman? I did have one question for you. I noticed that last year, we increased the professional development by about $7,500, $7,700 over 2023, what was actually spent. I'm just wondering if you are on track to spend that full $10,000 in professional development for 2024.
Yes, Madam Chair, we are definitely on track. We have 3 CPAs on our staff now, along with, well, when Renee was on our staff, she did a lot of training. So that probably will drop off a little bit, but we always just do webinars, and we'd like to maybe do more in-house training with, there's some places in Cheyenne that do it that we'd like to do that are more expensive.
I'm curious also, since you mentioned your CPA licenses, if we're paying for the judges to belong to the Bar Association, we're not paying for your CPA licenses?
Yeah, Madam Chair, yes, but you are paying for our CPA.
And what line item is that? Because I don't see a similar line item as what under licenses and fees that we saw under the municipal court. Is that under dues and subscriptions?
It might be. Brenda can look it up, though. Should be under licenses, though. So if it is, then we'll need to move that over. In the meantime, I can go on to the miscellaneous
fine.
division if you want.
Yeah,
Don't
no
wanna
worries.
wait.
I'm just curious about that because
Yeah.
I would expect to see it in the same type of
Sure.
line item
And it
as what
should
we would
be,
see it for the
I mean,
courts.
That was just a mistake if it's not in there.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any other questions for the treasurer? Thank you for all of your
And I
hard
do
work.
have another division I want to.
Oh, okay, which
Sorry.
division?
The miscellaneous division.
Oh, miscellaneous.
I
That's
do
not
the-
on our list. I don't think we'll be able to listen to that.
You
just
don't
kidding.
think so? I'm good.
176.
Good not talking about
I'm
it.
just kidding you. 176.
Yeah. Miscellaneous, yes, doesn't go anywhere else, so it goes in there. It's on page 176. The budgeted expenditures in this division dropped $271,000 $51. The decrease is highlighted on the significant changes to the 2024-2025 section, but I will quickly highlight these changes as well. The first change is the Wyoming Association of Municipalities membership dues have increased $1,305. Next, the city's audit, higher property tax administration fees, and our investment advisory services have increased $23,500. The next item is the United States Post Office has increased postage rates 3 times over the past year. Therefore, I increased citywide postage line item by $3,000. I decreased the city's gas and electric utilities budget by $100,000 due to lower natural gas prices. In July 2022, the Henry Hub natural gas spot price was $9.13, and today, luckily, it is $2.33. This is a 75% decrease in price, so that's why I decreased that, to allow that budget to be used for other purposes. Telecommunications decreased $15,000 due to the city hiring the company Spyglass, you might remember a couple years ago, to conduct the telecommunications audits, which in turn found many redundant and unnecessary lines and services that we were able to save money on. The city's Paycom payroll software subscription services increased $3,000. Our parking bond principal payment increased by $50,000 due to the amortization schedule, but the interest expense decreased $29.28. And if you turn to page 56 of your budget book, you can see the amortization schedule, which is a table that shows monthly payments for the bonds and how much of the payment is attributed to principal and interest. 56. So each year, the payment increases, which culminates into a large balloon payment that is due in the year 2028 in the amount of $1.6 million. We do have a bond reserve account at Wyoming Bank and Trust that has $545,000 in treasuries invested to help offset this balloon payment. But even considering that, the final payment will need to be budgeted over $1 million in the year 2028. Next, the insurance and bonding line item budget increased $154,000 due to a 20% rate increase placeholder for the city's property and liability insurance. I'm happy to report that Director Fountain informed me that the actual increase has come in at $35,000 less than what was budgeted. There were 2 one-time capital budget approvals for the Civic Center and the Ice and Event Center last fiscal year. Therefore, the amount of these general fund transfers decreased by $405,000. There was an increase of $10,500 approved for the general fund transfer for the Recreation Programs Fund for Fridays on the Plaza. This will cover the increase of costs of the performers as well as associated travel and backline expenses. Finally, we didn't have any extra funds this year to transfer to reserves, so that it decreased that line item by $43,828. Thank you very much, and I'm available for questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Treasurer Lockman on the miscellaneous category on page 176 and 177? Councilman Johnson.
Okay, on page 178, for your dues and subscriptions, it looks like that's the one that is, I mean, it's odd that it's dues and subscriptions if that's just wham, because it increased by 1305. And so am I to assume that we currently pay wham annually $54,855, or is there any additional parts in that dues and subscriptions line item that besides wham?
Madam Chair, through you, there's other items in there. The Wranglers for the Chamber of Commerce dues is in there.
Which page is that on? Because I know that when we used to do the Wranglers, that I can't remember seeing it in this one, because I think we did leads for, I think, about $50,000, and then there was, we
Yes.
paid for the Wranglers through the Chamber of Commerce, and then we also had our wham subscriptions. Do you know which page those are on?
The leads is separate. It's on page,
That's
page
still,
183, 182 and 183. That's where leads is, but the Wranglers is not in the support agencies. It's a dues that we pay
is there,
to belong to it.
so is there any page in here that actually shows what specifically we pay to wham and to the Chamber of Commerce?
Not in the budget book, but I
Oh.
can certainly give that to you.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, because I know
Sure.
it used to be in the past budget books on how much we
Yeah.
paid the Chamber of Commerce, because I think, well,
It was
theirs
about-
wasn't
About
50,000.
It's about
Oh, no, yeah, you're right.
5,000.
50 was for leads, and then the chamber was roughly around what, $5,000 or $6,000,
Right.
and then WAM is, I can't remember how much.
53,000-ish around there.
Okay, so,
But Leeds is 75,000 this year.
oh,
in
it's
that,
75K, and then WAM I thought was 50,000 in the
It-
past, and so it went up to about 53.
Yeah, around there, but I'll get that specific, how that's broken out.
Okay, yeah, if you wouldn't mind
Sure.
getting me that, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Treasurer Lockman? I did have one question for you. On the Spyglass, which was how we ended up with telecommunication savings,
Mhm.
how often do they recommend that we contract with them to review our telecommunications and for redundancy? I'm guessing that it's probably recommended like once every 5 years or something, since city governments have a tendency to piecemeal.
Madam Chair, so we actually contracted with Spyglass to have a continuous, they have a software program that IT manages, that we put all of our phone lines in there, and it's an ongoing basis. They monitor it real time. So they're doing that now, and they're finding savings as we speak too.
Will we get some sort of a report at some point on what they have found each fiscal year or?
Yeah, sure, I can certainly ask Tyler to provide that.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Treasurer Lockman? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we are now at Youth Alternatives. And so we're going to be, I'm guessing, on, are we at 10, we'll start on 104 and 105, and then will you also be speaking on the Youth Alternatives Grants Fund? Okay, which would be 190 and 194. So we'll start on 104 and 105.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and City Council members. I'm Brooks Cotton. I'm the Assistant Director at Youth Alternatives. I'm filling in for Jay Sullivan today. Jay is out sick, so I'm stepping up for him. So I first want to start about thanking the mayor and Ms. Lockman and the City Council for believing in the vision and work of Youth Alternatives. I'm happy to report that Youth Alternatives currently has 13 full-time employees as well as 2 part-time employees. Through the dedicated work of these employees, Youth Alternatives continues to be able to provide services such as counseling, court, academic, and mentoring services. Youth Alternatives also has 2 boards, the Friends of Youth Alternatives Board, as well as the Foster Grandparent Board. I'd like to go over the budget now. Youth Alternatives budget has actually decreased this year by $446. There's 2 payroll changes that we've requested for the 2025 fiscal year. Those salary increases are for 2 positions. The 2 positions we are asking for increases for are to align with the positions with the city's compensation study and plan. The first position is the Prevention Services Clinical Supervisor position. We're looking at increasing that by $3,156 plus $783 in benefits. That position has a lot of roles with it. They provide clinical supervision to lower level counseling staff. They provide counseling services for families and youth, and they provide emergency counseling and crisis resolution at Youth Alternatives. The second position is the volunteer coordinator and case manager position. Youth Alternatives is looking at increasing that position by $1,134 plus $211 in benefits. That individual is responsible for recruiting, training, and supervising volunteers and mentors, coordinating the mayor's youth council and associated activities, and providing direct support to assigned volunteers and families. As far as the dues and subscriptions budget, that slightly increased to $50 to cover Youth Alternatives membership dues with the Wyoming Youth Services Association, newspaper subscriptions and 2 youth magazine subscriptions. Those are really important. Sometimes our youth and families have to wait for meetings, so it gives them something to read while they are waiting to see us at Youth Alternatives. Then we have a $300 increase in telecommunication, which is through our Voice Nation answering service. Youth Alternatives provides services after hours. Those fees went up this year, so that's where that increase comes from. There is an increase of $10,000 to the maintenance budget to make necessary repairs to our ropes course. As you are aware, we do have a ropes course at Youth Alternatives. It's geared towards helping young people and adults confront their fears and issues. The course helps individuals build confidence to take risks, establish relationships, and learn about themselves. Every year or annually, the course has to be inspected by Adventures Experience, and we need to make some upgrades to that ropes course to keep it in compliance with the Association for Challenge Course Technology. The computer and software maintenance, that was increased by $720. That's due to 2 resources that are instrumental at Youth Alternatives. That's the Zoom platform, and then also medical check-in, which we use to check in our families. The copier expenses was increased to $226, and that was just based off the contract with Capital Business Systems. One of the big decreases was the building improvements line item. That's decreasing by $45,000. Last year, because of that line item, we were able to rebuild the deck in front of Youth Alternatives, as well as replace the retaining wall at Youth Alternatives. So I stand here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brooks. Any questions? I do want to say the deck looks really nice. That
Thank
looks
you.
great.
Thank
I
you.
did have a question on the ropes course.
Yes.
So 2 questions. One, I don't see anything listed under professional development for any of your employees. And I know that that's an ongoing professional development as a requirement for them to maintain their professional licenses. So are you covering that out of other funds or?
Yes, Madam Chair, Youth Alternatives has other funding sources, such as grants and a contract through the school district. So those funds are paid for through those other resources.
My second question is, I know that other groups utilize the ropes course, and I'm wondering, do we have some sort of a payment schedule for them to use the ropes course, since it is, I believe, the only one in the community?
Madam Chair, yes, we do have a payment schedule. The ropes course is used, I would say, primarily through the school district. We don't charge the school district for those services, but we do have a pay schedule for outside parties.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, it looks like we're ready for Youth Alternatives Grants Fund on page 190 through 194.
Actually, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I was late getting to the button. I do have a question. This is Councilman Cook.
I'm sorry, I did not see you, Councilman Cook. Sure, go ahead.
And I apologize. I didn't get my hand raised. I had to update my Zoom today, Madam Chair. So it's, as you know, I'm technology deficient anyway. So if I may, very quickly to Mr. Cotton. First of all, Brooks, that great presentation as always. You guys are always very well prepared, so thank you for that. I did have a question, Madam Chair, related to the last one, the discussion about the ropes course. And so I do know, Madam Chair, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I do know that a lot of our partnerships and using facilities and stuff for the school district has been impacted recently. So I'm just wondering if there's anyone there in the room that can maybe speak to that, or will this arrangement change, or should we anticipate that, or?
Do you know? Brooks?
Madam Chair, through you, as far as the ropes course, we'll continue to provide that service free of charge. I think that would probably be the best way I could
Yeah.
describe that.
I agree. No, I agree. I just, Mr. Cotton, I just was, as you're certainly aware, we've recently, our parks folks have had difficulty, with, using some of those facilities and so forth anymore. And, some of that arrangement has changed. So I was just wondering, I guess, if this arrangement would be part of that. So, but you answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Rooney?
Madam Chairman, as a follow-up to that and kind of along similar vein, does Youth Alternatives use in any of the district's facilities? And if so, do you have to pay a fee for those?
Madam Chair, through you, currently Youth Alternatives is not using any of the school buildings. At one point, we had an access after school program where we were working out of Johnson Junior High and Cary Junior High, but that program is no longer available.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Might be something to consider next time we do the MOU with the school district, making sure we include the ropes course, because I know it's heavily used by Triumph, at least. So,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, any other questions before we move on to Youth Alternative Grants Fund on page 190 through, it looks like 194. Okay.
So Youth Alternatives provides services. We do have a lot of grants. We do have a grant through CRMC. We also have a contract through the school district, to continue to provide services. We also have services funded through the Joint Powers Board. Yes. And I can stand by for any questions.
Are there any questions from pages 190 through 194 on the Youth Alternatives Grant Fund?
Madam Chair,
Councilman Roybal?
just a quick question on the grants fund. Do you guys have those audited? Like we have the city audit. Do you have that audited also?
Yes, Madam Chair, through you. We've, a lot of the grants do have audits and we have to provide reports to those entities about the services that we are providing.
Okay, and those audits all come back clean? Or
Yes.
Come back clean?
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman
Madam
Rennie?
Chairman, and following up again on the discussion with Laramie County School District 1, I see that their grants have risen from almost doubled from 175,000 to 344. So are we implementing a new program that is requiring an extra 168,000?
Madam Chair, through you. The services that were provided through the school district, that contract was in place for many years. I don't have that contract unfortunately in front of me. So just with inflation and those pieces, that's why there was an increase with what the school district provided to Youth Alternatives.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
I'm wondering, Brooks, as I look at this, there's an ed pass-through grants, which and that was 186,000, which is not going to happen, isn't projected to happen in 2025. Was that also through the school district, and maybe those funds have been just redistributed into the LCSD #1 grants?
Madam Chair, unfortunately, I had to probably defer to our operations manager about that.
Okay,
So, yes.
great, thank you. I also, and your volunteer banquet is coming up on May 31st, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
yes.
thank you for the invitation. I'm hopeful that many of our councilmen will be able to attend. Any other questions? Hearing none, I think we have completed our agenda for today. So we will be in chambers this evening for our council meeting. We will be back here tomorrow, Tuesday, May 14th, to hear from Public Works. Thank you and have a great day.